May see the science gal.
May see the science gal.
May see, may see, may see, may see, may.
Ecology is the study of ecosystems. Science rules. T-minus 5 seconds.
May see the science gal.
Politics. Always getting in the way of scientific advancements. Did you know that Charles Darwin transformed the way that we understand the world, but nobody believed in because of the government? Charles Darwin was a scientist that was studying the theory of evolution by natural selection. He did not wish to create a controversy, but he developed a theory that brought him into conflict with his religious and theological training. Darwin was born in 1809 and was instantly fascinated with all living things. By the time he was 16, he entered medical school. He decided he wanted a degree in theology. By 1831, Darwin embarked on a 5-year voyage on a beagle. Now I know what you're thinking. No, it isn't this kind of beagle. The beagle is a boat where Darwin spent most of his time journaling about plants and animals in the places they visited. Then, the theory of natural selection is born. This means the fittest animals or plants will be the most likely to survive in an environment. It will also pass on desirable characteristics that will become more common as they get passed on. Darwin wanted to gain a mountain of evidence before he came out with his theories, so he used finches and other people's advice in order to form his new theories. Darwin not only changed how we see plants and animals, but how they came about to today's world. In fact, scientist Lamarck suggested that acquired traits could be inherited. After gathering all of his evidence, Darwin's theory consisted of natural selection, which included variation, the struggle for existence, survival of the fittest, and descent with modification. Now that we know a little background about Darwin and his theories, I feel the sense that you aren't seeing me like you usually do. What? Don't you recognize me? Come on, man. It's me, Macy the Science Gal. No? Well, okay. I guess I'll just have to evolutionize. I mean, come on, guys. How could you not tell that that was me? Gene variation. Did you know that traits are often polygenic, meaning they have multiple traits attached to one gene? And going along with that, the environment can actually affect the traits. This is what we call evolution, which is a change in the relative frequency within a population. But what can cause gene variation? Mutations. Let's jump back to polygenic traits. Polygenic traits tend to follow a normal distribution, but when natural selection occurs, this tends to differ. Quick, look over here. No, over here. No, over here. Stop switching directions. Will you just stop for a second? Stop being so crazy and just stabilize. Have I ever told you the interrupting cow joke? No? Knock, knock. Interrupting cow. Moo! Genetic drift and speciation can occur within a population. Genetic drift is like when you enter a new place. When new animals enter an area, this causes the genetic pool to shift to a new genetic pool. Speciation is when a new species comes to an area. Since plants and animals spend a lot of time around each other in their environment, this means that they can often look a lot alike but be different species. This is called convergent evolution. Coevolution is also something that can occur within a population. This means two different species react to their environment around them. Naturally, species are diverse and can put up a lot of barriers. A common barrier between species is a reproductive barrier. Normally, mating occurs when two individuals click. Prezygotic barriers have different isolations that don't allow them to come together and reproduce. Habitat isolation has to do with different habitats. If a species over here lives in a different habitat than this species over here within the same area, they will never come in contact with each other. This is similar with behavior isolation, which has to do with the different signals that both species differ in. Temporal isolation has to do with the various temperatures that don't allow the two species to mate. Mechanical isolation means they don't have the right parts. You know, after all that talk about speciation, it got me into thinking the modes of speciation. What kind of mode of evolution is there? In band, you have many tempos, but in evolution, there's only two: punctuated equilibrium and gradualism. Gradualism sounds just as it sounds. It gradually forms over time. Punctuated equilibrium means it goes and then it stops, and then it goes and then it stops, and then it goes and then it stops, and then it goes and then it stops. As simple as that. Fossils. Fossils are another great way to track evolution. In fact, paleontologists study fossils every day. One way paleontologists can tell when an animal died is using relative dating. This means they use how far underneath the earth to tell how old the organism is. Radioactive dating is often used to specially locate the animals and when they were born. Radioactive dating is more specific to the time period of each organism. They use the half-lives of various elements to see when the animal could have been alive. Carbon dating is the most unique and the most used. They compare carbon-14's half-life to the organism they found. Now let's take a look at some timescales. The endosymbiotic theory states that eukaryotic cells formed from prokaryotic cells. Mitochondria look very similar. In fact, they both reproduce by binary fission, and they both also contain DNA. Systematics is the study of evolutionary relationships. Darwin stated that all species come from a common ancestor. Cladistics can involve derived or ancestral characteristics. A derived characteristic means it came from the most recent common ancestor. An ancestral characteristic means it came from an ancestor before that species' time. The outgroup of a cladogram means that they might not possess all of the ancestral qualities. In fact, you can use an outgroup to help determine which ancestors are connected to each other. Let's go take a look.
Wow, look at that molecular clock work. The molecular clock is another great way to keep track of the rate of evolution.
Now let's talk about how we organize organisms. It's called classification. We can also compare animals and what we think they might be related to by using characteristics and how they compare to other characteristics, such as homologous and homoplastic traits.
Disease.
Have you ever wondered about the evolution of a human? The order went prosimians, monkeys, apes, and then humans. We learned to evolutionize. We learned how to use the trees, how to swing from them, how to climb from them. We learned to judge long distances, and our lifespan increases. The characteristics between humans and primates became very distinct. We became bipedal. We had an S-shaped spine. We are bipedal, have an S-shaped spine, a bowl-shaped pelvis, and femurs that angle inward to the knees. We also have an arch in our foot. It is said to think that these guys evolved into us. It all started in Africa when they roamed freely, and eventually when Pangea formed, they spread across the entire world. And look at us now.
They see the science gal.